What the Tech is sponsored by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks, with more than 100,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature. For a free audiobook of your choice, go to audiblepodcast.com/Andrew. Squarespace, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website, blog, or online portfolio. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase, go to squarespace.com and use offer code WhatTheTech1. And by Carbonite Online Backup, automatic, continual, and unlimited backups for your computer. Try it for free at Carbonite.com and use offer code WhatTheTech and get 2 bonus months with purchase.
What the Tech?
Everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarian. I'm joined by the very tired Paul Thurrott.
That guy.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm pretty good.
Nice haircut on you.
Thank you.
Buzz cut.
Yep, I told her to go deep this time.
Proof that your hair.
want to.
Proof that your hair is real.
What, was there some doubt that my hair?
I don't
was
know.
real?
There's some rumors on the internet, according to the baldtruth.com website. It's been speculated that it's not real hair.
It's real hair. What do you want me to do to it? It's just hair.
I think you should just have like the Zune logo, like engraved in the back,
like it shaved into it.
Yeah, just shave it in the back of the head. You know what I feel bad for? Do you remember a couple of people got Zune tattoos?
Yep, I do.
I wonder how bad they feel.
Oh, I feel bad for those guys.
So today, we're going to do a couple different things. We have a lot of news to get to, which we haven't done news in about 3 weeks right now. So we're finally going to get to some tech news here. And we did viewer's choice. I sent out a tweet earlier today, and I said, what do you guys want us to talk about? And I got some interesting topics here, which we'll also go into. But before we go into all of that stuff, I want to talk about the biggest news of the day, and that's Facebook. I know Paul's a big Facebooker, a big fan of Facebook. Spends all hours of the day on Facebook. They had an announcement today, which they announced their a new graph search, introducing graph search. So pretty much you could search your friends for topics that you're interested in. So you could write something like people who like cycling that are from my town, and Facebook knows that those people like cycling because Facebook knows everything, and it'll pull up images of them, and it'll tell you like, hey, look, Paul likes to cycle. So what do you make of this? I mean, this is because search has been something that's been lacking in Facebook. And I've never felt the need to search for people who like cycling or search for people who went to the same restaurant as me last week.
Yeah.
But I could see how this could be used by, let's say, marketing companies. If I have a podcasting product, I could search Facebook for podcasters.
Right.
And it'll give me every single podcaster on Facebook or whatever it wants to find. What do you make of this?
Well, it's confusing.
Very confusing.
No one really has access to it yet, or few people do. I don't, so I can just go to their site and look at it and do the little demo thing. And I don't know, I actually think this is kind of a big deal on a number of levels. Obviously, on the most basic level, they're taking on Google in some way, in the sense that it's a search product. And they have an amazing treasure trove of data that Google cannot get access to. So that's, on that level, amazing. And on a bad note for Microsoft, this appears to have absolutely nothing to do with Microsoft. So even though Facebook and Microsoft are huge partners and they have a Bing search partnership, and that search that you were just complaining about is in fact powered by Bing, this, I want to call it social graph search. It's graph search, right? Is not based on Bing technology. It's something that Facebook apparently developed internally. So Microsoft kind of got the shaft in a way. Microsoft had an announcement today about how when this feature breaks down and there aren't any results, there'll be other search results.
Which will be Bing.
That will be Bing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like getting, leftovers or whatever. So.
Yeah, I mean, if let's say you're searching, but they do that right now. I mean, I could search for something and it'll pull up, some random website, which I wasn't really looking for.
How does this work? So, yes, in other words, like friends, if I typed in friends in New York who like beer, right? Nothing comes up. 'Cause
Right
I
now.
have regular,
It says search
And I
more.
get-
So I could hit search more, and it's actually Bing.
Well, yeah. Well, here, see, it says search the web here. I mean, and I've never done this before. I'm only doing this because we're talking about it. Like, I've never even seen this before. So this is just Bing search results in
Facebook
side of Facebook that are not context sensitive in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So it's pretty weak.
No, it is
Plus
really
a list
weak.
of people I may know, which is not really helpful at all because I don't know any of these people.
But I mean, the bigger news here, and so far people haven't made a big deal about it, is that this is not for you and I.
It's for normal people.
No, well, it's not even for normal people. In my opinion, I think this is for marketing and advertising companies to kind of search what you're doing. And it makes it
Interesting.
easier for them because it's a public thing now. I could search for, friends that like Budweiser, and I could look at who likes Budweiser. I mean, that's really what it's doing.
Well, I mean, they have some examples, right? And if you watch that little video, it's like friends who live in San Francisco who like to go trail hiking, or
Yeah.
whatever the term was. It's okay. It's kind of interesting.
Interesting, though. I mean, they're technically getting into the personalized search market. And I believe they said, well, how come you haven't teamed up with Google? And I think they said something like, well, if they want to work with us, then they can, or something like that.
They appear not to like Google.
Yeah.
So, that's how I would. I mean, it seems very clear that this is they want to be independent from Google.
They do,
you
yeah.
know, which God bless them for that, because Google already has such a dominant, lead over everybody else.
I don't know how important this is going to be if people are going to use it.
The one thing I every time Facebook does anything, I have the same thought, which is this is a walled garden, and it is like the return of AOL.
Yeah. Well,
That-
that's exactly what it is. And it's the same, I guarantee you, I mean, it's pretty much the same user base, right?
Yeah, but what's interesting about it is if you think about AOL and MSN, that first version, and CompuServe and the other online services of that day, they were really desperate in the early days of the internet to keep customers and try to have some value above and beyond like the wild west of the internet. But the truth was, as the internet was exploding, that was kind of the more interesting thing for most people, especially as it got more and more mature. But as the internet now is just like this all-encompassing everything, you could kind of make the argument that a service like AOL, Facebook, starts to make sense again, because there's like too much on the internet. So the search here is relevant to you because you're searching amongst the people that and in other words, when you say something like, I mean, eventually I could picture this saying being something along the lines of, I'm trying to find a good wine that goes with this food. And maybe someone has done something along those lines, but I think the future of this is going to be people seeing that you searched for that.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
then
you're absolutely
helping
right.
you out,
You're absolutely right. This is becoming another AOL because they can have internal searches. So even if I say, what kind of wine goes with fish,
Yeah.
it might pull up a product page where they give recipes out and they say, okay, this is the type of wine that you pair with this kind of fish.
Sure.
So it's exactly what AOL did with keyword searches.
Yeah, it's right. And in fact, I can't use it because I can only read about it. But one of the interesting aspects of this is you can save these searches, and so
you
do
can.
it's like I don't know what they call it, but it becomes a view. I think that was the term they used, but it's essentially like it becomes a page on Facebook. So presumably, what that is some kind of dynamic page. Something that you could then further share with your friends on Facebook.
So I could share everything that I've been looking up on Facebook.
Presumably, yeah. I mean, again, it's kind of theory now because I don't have it, but it does seem that way. Yeah.
It's interesting how we went away from this. The whole AOL thing was
Yeah.
so closed,
Yeah,
and we wanted nothing to do with them.
Here we are.
And now we're back to this.
know.
Well, we're just going to close everything in, and we're going to kind of tell you what you should be looking for. Oh, you were looking for recipes? Okay, you're not going to get out of our little bubble, but here's somebody else that did a recipe, and this is what you're going to like. I wonder
Well, I mean-
I wonder if you talk about the utilization of, I can't even talk today, of this kind of search will, in over the next 5 years of expanding it, how many people are going to be actually going to Google and searching on Google compared to just popping it into Facebook, because pretty much that's the website that's open 24 hours a day in your browser.
Well, it depends on what it is, and it's going to be, assuming that this shift occurs, it's going to be a shift that occurs over time, right? So right now, obviously, you can go to Google and search for anything. So you can go up there, you type in anything you want, you get crazy search results, and you know, like we all do Google searches, you know, they're pretty good, but there's also a bazillion search results, a lot of which are not very helpful. And for this is the type of thing like Bing would call like a vertical search, but for certain types of searches, I would imagine you could go to Facebook, and sometimes there are searches that make sense, that there are things you want to ask people that you trust. It's something that Microsoft is trying to do with Bing, integrated into Bing.com.
Yeah, and Facebook could do it perfectly because they already have all the information. Every one of your posts, it probably is going through, and eventually will go through some algorithm, and they target the searches based on your specific interests.
I mean, there's going to be ludicrous results, right? I mean, that wine thing that we made up, you could imagine some friend of mine had wine with dinner at some restaurant, took a picture of it, and that shows up in the results, and is absolutely worthless.
Yeah, that's not what you're looking
answering
for.
the question. No, but it's one of those things I think it needs to mature and will mature and become more and more interesting over time.
Yeah, I actually thought today's announcement would have been that they're going to be developing some sort of new marketplace to kind of compete with an Amazon, because I honestly, that's where I see them going and how they're going to be able to make money, because they're already, the user base is there, so might as well sell them things. If they teamed up with someone like Walmart or some sort of large, you know, brick and mortar, where you could do orders just on the fly with one-click buying.
Right.
I mean, that's where I thought that they would go with it, but I guess, you know, they're slowly building up what they're going to do. But, you know, the question is, where does a company like Facebook go? We just saw MySpace relaunch today, and nobody really cares about it. They become some sort of like Pinterest type website. And is there fatigue when it comes to social networking websites?
I think there's fatigue when it comes to anything. I think there's a natural consolidation that occurs with everything, you know, whether it's, you know, smartphone platforms or whatever. I mean, I think too much choice is dumb. I mean, you know, Google Plus is probably pretty excellent. The problem is everyone I know is on Facebook, so there's really not much of an incentive for me personally to go over there.
I've been using Google Plus. I mean, since they launched that community thing that they're doing now, which is pretty much like a Facebook group. I've been on there a lot more. I mean, I'm on there almost every day, where before I would go on maybe once a week.
Well, there's always going to be, you know, the one thing that each of these services does really well, or, you know, maybe 4 or 5 things. I mean, I look at something like Google Plus and I think these Google Plus Hangouts, for example, are kind of interesting. Like, I could picture doing something like that. But it doesn't change the fact that, you know, because we talked about Facebook, I brought up Facebook. I found out something about a friend of mine that was pretty cool. And this guy lives really far away from me, and it's not something I would have known about at all, or maybe not for months. Otherwise, and that makes, you know, Facebook really special. And it's hard to overcome that kind of a thing. I guess we could call it lock-in, but it's just a simple matter of, you know, preference. I mean, people that I know are on Facebook. So.
It's so fascinating to me that people aren't using AIM, and they're not using Skype to communicate. They're pretty much communicating via Facebook all the time. And I can't begin to tell you how many business contacts I have that exclusively only speak to me on Facebook, and they'll send me entire business stuff on Facebook.
I do things a very particular way, and I use Twitter and Facebook, right? So I use Facebook for personal stuff. You've seen me on Facebook, so you know that I have never, not once, ever posted anything work related on Facebook, and I won't.
But you recently did that, right? You recently did this cleansing of Facebook. I mean, you.
Yeah, I did, right? But I was never posting anything work related. What I was doing before was allowing anyone to be my friend on Facebook, which, in retrospect, was a mistake. So I use Twitter for work-related stuff, where I'm basically having conversations with people I don't know, although I do know a lot of people on Twitter as well. Facebook is just personal stuff, so it's only people that I do know. And it's weird because I get a little irritated when people I know and even work with will post work-related stuff on Facebook, which for some personal reason is bothersome to me. And on the flip side, I'll be on Facebook, I'm Twitter on Sunday working, and friends of mine are posting stuff about football on Twitter, and it's like, what are you doing? That's not what, this doesn't go here, But obviously, there were no rules like that. Those are Paul's rules. I mean, people can use these services.
And I mean, you're an exception. I've always kept my Facebook open. And I'm like, add me if you want. I don't care. But I've started to get a lot of the crazies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. Sure.
And it gets a little bizarre to me. Like I never had that problem. And I guess the show, this show is a popular show, and we have a whole bunch of other things. So every now and then, maybe like once a month, I'll click on someone's name that I know I shouldn't have added him for whatever reason. I'm definitely profiling this person, and I'm definitely labeling him as a nut job, but I accept them anyway, and I'll get this belligerent, I hate you, you should die message on Facebook from him like 2 a.m.
Wow.
Like crazy, crazy stuff. So like I'm coming to the point that, well, am I a little too open? Or have I just put on, I guess, these visors, and I've said, well, I'm going to accept everybody, and I'm going to add whoever I want because I'm a public person. But now, like, I'm thinking, like, well, you know what? I kind of want some privacy on the internet. I don't think I should be adding everybody.
Yeah, it took me a little while to get through that, but it was worth doing it. It burned a couple people. And
how
there's nothing I can do about that.
How did you, and then we're going to move on, but how did you narrow it down? Like, what were your specific, like, is it like, I have to meet you in real life?
I had come to this, right? I don't remember if, I think this was before we started doing this show together, but I don't remember the timing anymore. But at some point, I came to the fact that I would not be able to use Facebook the way it's supposed to be used unless I did this. I had way too many, I had something like 1,500 friends in there, something like that. And so I basically wrote, I put a little post. I said, look, I'm going to be dumping everybody I don't actually know. It's not personal. I just want to be able to use this thing to share photos of my kids and, whatever. And some people saw that. And I actually got some emails from people like, hey, I saw your thing. I completely understand, thanks for the heads up, whatever. But then I did it, and it took a couple of nights. I just sat down in front of the TV with a laptop, and I stepped through each person in my friends list, and I evaluated them. Some of them, the names are kind of vaguely familiar. It's like, do I actually know this person? You have to look them up, and oh yeah, I do or I don't. And it was kind of tedious, but it took a couple of nights. It took less time than I thought it was going to.
My wife went through the same exact thing where she kind of cleansed the people she doesn't know. Yeah. And it's kind of difficult. I think it's worse for a female on these sites.
Yeah,
because sure she'll tell me like, listen, like I got this crazy message from this person that's in our chat, like regular, like people that we know, like in the chat room, like regular viewers. She would get like these bizarre messages from them, and she felt like really uncomfortable with it. So she just said, you know what, I'm just going to delete everybody on there, and I'm only adding family members and close friends. And if I'm friends with you, it's still going to take a while for me to add you. She just wants it really small.
Yeah. Yep.
And it works for her.
Or even Facebook, same thing. I mean, Twitter, same thing. I had to, if you go look me up on Twitter, I mean, I have X number of followers, but I only follow a very limited number of people, and also organizations. Like I obviously follow, Microsoft product teams and so forth. And my screen just went blank.
As I said this right now, okay? As I'm talking about this, look, I'm going to pull up my Facebook. This is what I just got tagged in on Facebook. For the people listening, it's an I want to be an iPad tester image. Somebody just tagged me in this on my timeline.
See, that is unacceptable. And by the way, I used to get stuff like that all the time.
Sneakers. I used to get tagged in like sneakers.
And you write this person, and it's like, seriously? Like what, people would tag me in photos that I wasn't in. And there were no people in it. It would be like they would tag people they knew. I don't know what that is all about, but there was a lot of problems in there, and I did this. I did something similar on Twitter. Actually, I think the way I did it on Twitter was I just deleted everybody, and then I just went and found the people I knew.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, so I only follow maybe 50 or 60 people on Twitter, but it's more of a free ranging conversation. But the trouble, whatever it is, when you're out, it's weird to me because I think if we were in person or even doing some kind of a Google Hangout thing where it was like a video chat, I think there's a thing that a line that people won't cross that they do cross. Like pretty routinely.
Oh, 100%. It's anonymity. People think that they're protected because they're on the internet and they could act like asses. I mean, that's the reality of it. It's always been like that.
It always blows my mind. I mean, I will say the one thing that has been fairly consistent in my life for many, many years is that you get into some kind of an argument online with somebody, and this could have been something from like Usenet from 20 years ago. It could have been AOL from 15 years ago. It could have been whatever. And then you'd say it would be on Twitter or maybe Facebook before I got rid of the public stuff. You have this email exchange, and then suddenly it's like, oh, I've been reading your stuff for many years. I really respect you. I didn't mean anything by it. They're always very nice. When you actually have kind of a one-on-one thing with them. But it blows my mind sometimes. I had a thing over the weekend with this guy who had been following me on Twitter for a long time. I recognized his little picture, on the Twitter app, and he's getting really belligerent with me. And I always say stuff to people like, listen, I need you to think carefully before you respond this time, or I really need you to stop pinging me about this topic. And they just keep going and going and going. And it's like, dude, seriously. And eventually I just have to block them because it's just ridiculous. And it is, it's just too bad. I don't, because I want to be as open and transparent and out there as you can be. But
yeah, it's hard. No, it's really difficult. I mean, I got an email last week, and again, I attribute this to the culture of the internet and how we are as people. I got an email last week from a guy that was really unhappy with our performance last week on the show. He was very upset. He said we did a really weak show. We didn't really talk about technology, and we were off for 4 weeks. Like, he was really upset, and he's unsubscribing. And I really was tempted to write back an email to this guy to say, hey, sorry, our performance wasn't great. It's not.
It happens to everybody.
It happens to everybody. Sometimes you just blow it, Yep. So I really wanted to write this coherent email to him and say, listen, it's hit or miss. It depends on how I'm feeling. We were off for 4 weeks, and I kind of wanted to explain myself. And then I thought, what am I doing? He should understand. I mean, for anybody that watches television or listens to the radio, there's some great episodes. There's some okay episodes. And sometimes, you know what? It's not a good one. But to the point that it's affected him to write this much to us.
Well, and it's always something like, I've been listening to you for a year and a half. I've always really enjoyed the show. I listen to it religiously every week. Last week's show sucked. I'm going to unsubscribe. Like, really? Like, wow.
Like, all right. I mean, that's fine.
If I was that harsh with any one of my favorite sports teams, I guess I wouldn't be watching sports anymore. I mean, everybody, you can't hit a home run every time.
Listen, performance anxiety, it happens to all of us.
I don't think it was anxiety so much as
I think it was just exhaustion. I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And you try to think to myself, I'm a pretty level-headed person. I'm out of my mind at times, but like, I kind of understand, like, listen, not everything is going to be catered towards me. And there are times that it's exactly what I want to hear, and sometimes it's not. So whatever. Just the case. But I think that's the culture of the internet. I think we're used to, and we've become the society that everything is targeted to us. See, yawn, move on. See, exactly in the chat room. I think everything is targeted so much to us that we kind of expect that everything is going to be targeted to us.
Well, not again. I think maybe just to put an end cap on this topic, to bring it back to the Facebook thing. One of the dangers of this kind of insular environment is the same is one of the topics we've kind of talked about in the past, where as news is tailored toward you, as the email that you get is more tailored toward you, which is an incredible technological feat. We find ourselves not exposed to things that are contrary to what we like, and we get more and more used to just what we like. And there is a danger to that, and I think and I'm not saying there's like a dark side to graph search or anything, but unfortunately, as this thing gets more and more sophisticated, and people may rely more and more on just what their insular family of and friend group on Facebook likes, you risk not being exposed to new experiences that are kind of outside of that world. And this is something that it's like the right-wing people who watch only Fox News or liberal people only watch MSNBC. You tend to only see things that affirm what you already know to be true, thus further affirming it, and not maybe causing your brain to kind of calcify a little bit and making it harder for you to do or see new things or see things differently, whatever. So there's a danger to it.
There is a danger to it. But before we continue, Paul, it is time to talk about Audible.com, a great sponsor of What the Tech. They've been with us since the beginning, I think. Audible's been with the show, and I'm glad that they're continuing the relationship with us. Audible is the leading place to go for audiobooks with over 100,000 titles to choose from. Paul is a big Audible user. I am. My wife absolutely loves Audible, and she is not even the person that I would imagine that's doing Audible. She runs all the time, and instead of listening to music, she's just putting on an audiobook, and she loves it. It's unbelievable. If you go to audiblepodcast.com/Andrew, you could sign up and get a free audiobook of your choice. Now, Paul, what is your Audible pick of the week this week? Because I saw the title, and I was really interested into it. And it seems to be an ongoing topic here on the show.
Yep.
I think we should change it to what the World War II at this point with the show.
Well, so I've gone post World War II.
Okay.
So I spent much of last fall reading that Second World War book by Anthony Beevor, which is incredible. So incredible that I then went and read a book just about the Fall of Berlin, which was another book he had written. That's not on Audible, unfortunately. And I think I mentioned that probably last week. On Windows Weekly last week, I recommended a book called The Iron Curtain, which is about the Soviet Union's domination of Eastern Europe post-World War II. And that's pretty incredible. And then I'm kind of going back and forth on that one with another book, which is my pick for this week here, which is called Ike's Bluff, President Eisenhower's Secret Battle to Save the World, which is about his post-World War II experience, primarily as president of the United States for 8 years, mostly in the 1950s. Deals with the Cold War and his battle, not actual like battlefield battles, but battles with Khrushchev and the Soviet Union and the war in Korea. And, he's an interesting guy because he was the supreme commander in World War II, but I don't actually think this guy was a huge intellect, although he was apparently some kind of incredible gambler, card player, golfer, competitor type. But I actually disagree with a lot of the decisions he made in World War II. And I don't know, but he did preside over a period of amazing economic growth in the United States, including, the creation of the national highway system and so forth. So interesting book about, and obviously historically important and interesting guy. And we finally moved off of World War II. So
we have. So we're going to enter the 60s after this. You know what? Maybe that's what we should do. Every week for the next couple of weeks, we should pick a different decade and pick a book from that describing it.
Well, okay. So actually, I have another book in my pocket which deals with the French experience in Vietnam before the American war in Vietnam. So that's a 1950s to early 1960s time period. So there is actually kind of a natural progression occurring.
I've said it before on the show. I went to a New York City public school, so you learn up until World War II, and then you learn that the 50s was amazing, the 60s were great. We went into war for Vietnam, and then everything else, Reagan saved the world. So that's history from a New York City public school.
It was sort of like that.
Kinda, yeah, kind of close, except missing a couple details here and there. Great pick, again, by Paul. If you guys have a pick, if you guys are reading a book, I say reading when it comes to Audible, send me an email, guysfromqueens@gmail.com. And you know what? Maybe we should do like a viewer's pick of the week also, where I could talk about what the viewers are picking. And that's audiblepodcast.com/Andrew. Get your free audiobook. And I want to thank Audible for supporting What the Tech. Now, we're going to get into our viewer choices. These are topics that you guys sent over to me on Twitter. And you can continue to do it. I mean, maybe we'll do this once a week. We'll do like a topic with you guys. I'm on Twitter at Andrew Zarian, and you could follow me and just send me a message there. But one of the viewers, and I'm sorry, my Twitter feed got so cluttered. I don't remember who it was. But they said, will the next technological leap come from hardware or software? And I thought that would be an interesting topic to talk about because we're in this phase right now where hardware is kind of plateaued to a level and software is catching up to it. And we're seeing that with things like what's more important? Is the hardware important or is the software important? When you talk about a phone right now, what makes you buy the phone? Is it the hardware or is it the software that it's using and the ecosystem that it's in? And I wanted to talk about this for a little bit. I think honestly, software is not caught up to the hardware at all. And the next big leap we're going to have is software, in my opinion.
I think it's more than a next big leap. I think the next several big leaps are going to all be software related. Software services, software, I guess we would just call it.
When we talk about like things like Windows RT and we talk about Windows 8 and how it's totally different than what Windows was up on, for 25 years. I mean, since Windows 3.0, Windows was Windows. And now we're seeing Apple kind of shift direction and say, okay, you know what? We've created these unbelievable devices. Now we got to kind of match the software to go with that. Do you think it's a UI type change that we need, or do you think it's just the overall function of what software is and how we imagine software to function on a computer? It's no longer clicking on an icon, opening it up, and using Excel. I mean, everything is pretty much integrated into the OS now.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about hardware over the past several years, you could pick anything, laptops, iPhones or iPods, anything like that. I mean, you basically see this kind of natural evolution. And that's because it's not hard to imagine what comes next. When you see something like the Surface RT and you're like, this is pretty good, but it runs Windows RT. It doesn't run Windows 8. It's it's not hard to imagine where the next one's going to fall. Well,
I can't
the
tell
hardware
you.
stuff is always very, very, very obvious.
I can't tell you what the specs are for the Surface. How many megahertz is it? You don't hear that anymore. Nobody talks about that.
Well, it almost doesn't matter. In other words, like, the iPhone 5 comes out, it's whatever thickness, it's whatever weight, it's whatever. And the next version is probably going to be thinner. It's probably going to be lighter. It's going to have those things. But the real innovation of whatever that device is going to come through the software and obviously, the services to which it connects. And I think that's the big deal. I wrote a little blurb today about Google Chrome is on the 25th version. And, Chrome is a product that's getting more and more mature all the time. But one of the things they're supporting is speech, right? So you're going to be able to use this kind of web API for speech. You're going to be able to enable speech scenarios in web apps. They used examples like the ability to search the web, the ability to dictate an email, or to write a word processing document in an online service.
And by the way, that was a great article you wrote on your website.
Okay.
Somebody sent it to me and they go, man, this is the first time I've been to Paul's site. Really well written and easy to read. I'm like, that's what I've been saying.
Well, thank you. but I mean, the point being that, we get caught up in this kind of multi-touch stuff. And I think when you compress the evolution of technology, that multi-touch isn't going to have as huge of a run as, say, keyboards and mice did. And that more natural user interfaces like gestures and gestures where you're doing the Minority Report thing, or I call air gestures, or voice commands are going to become more prevalent. As annoying as it is for me to be walking around in a city and listening to people, talk out loud to each other on their Bluetooth equipped cell phones, I do think that voice commands are kind of the future. We see a little bit of it in the Xbox with that Bing search stuff. I mean, the Bing enabled Connect capabilities and so forth.
But do you think something like this?
On the iPhone.
Do you think something like this is going to take off on a? I mean, I could definitely see it on the phone. Google Now is a phenomenal, feature of Android, and I use it regularly. I mean, I'm using it almost every day. I don't know if are we going to open up Chrome and hit the button and just say
no? The point is you don't hit the button.
Thurrott.
So I think there are going to be things that are automatic. In other words, there are going to be lights that dim in rooms. I know there already are. I'm just saying, it will become a common thing that around a house, one of the things you can do to save energy is dim lights automatically as no one is in the room. So it will auto detect not just movement, which is kind of dumb, but the actual presence of people, using sensors in various parts of the room to determine that someone is sitting very still, so they're not triggering a motion sensor, but there is in fact someone in the room and they're not asleep or whatever. But I think that the casual nature of this is what's going to put it over the top, that it enables this new form of more casual interaction with technology that has nothing to do with an individual device at all. And that's why it's software based, and that's why it's important, so that you walk into the kitchen, open the fridge, and we need more milk. And there are automatic ways to do that by moving the milk in and out of the refrigerator, and it senses that the milk is empty. But there's also going to be a way for you to say, we need more milk. And that gets added to some list and maybe is even automated that it's delivered to your house. And I that's the type of thing where I think voice is important. It's going to be a little weird at first, like the people talking to themselves, seemingly on a Bluetooth equipped cell phone. But basically what you're talking about, pardon the pun, is, people that are instructing things or triggering actions. And it's going to be seamless and not so much device based. I mean, now you do it with a phone, or you do it with the Xbox because you want to watch a TV show or pause some music or something.
Paul,
but it's going to be more pervasive over time than that.
When you're writing your books, do you use Dragon? Or
No,
are you physically typing?
This has always been the dream for me. So I've had so many ins and outs with the voice dictation stuff. I've never actually done it. I went through a period early on where I was really nervous about carpal tunnel and that I was going to have this problem and that I needed to, figure that out. And I think if life went in that direction where I had to do it, that would probably be what would put me over the top. I think I actually bought a fairly, with the new version of Dragon was sometime in the past 12 months because it was on some crazy sale, but I actually just never used it.
You never used it. To me, I think about this all the time where am I going to use something like this? Because with the new Web Speech API in Google Chrome, you're going to be able to use it for a large selection of Google web apps. And, for example, you could do it with Gmail. So if I'm sending an email, if I'm in Gmail, there are a lot of times that I just remember like, I should send an email to Paul. And I'll say, I could do it that way. I could just speak it out if it's a quick email saying like, hey, Paul, are we doing a show at 4:00? Send.
Right.
I mean, I could see that actually working. I think, to kind of go back to it, I think it is software that's going to boom us.
Because what you just described, I mean, ideally, that should work no matter where you are. If you're in your house or on a train or even lying in bed or whatever, the device that you now think of needing to have to make that doesn't have to be with you, because this is something that's more pervasive than that. That it's not a text message that has to go out through a phone. It's not a Facebook message that has to go out through whatever the various outlets for that are. It becomes more pervasive than that. And that's why I think it's the software angle, because it has to go well beyond the confines of a single device or a single system.
Here's an interesting question from a viewer in the chat room. He says, if I don't do this in my OS, considering, Windows and Microsoft both have global speech available, why would I do it in a half-ass browser?
Because it's not a half-ass browser. People do it on Siri all the time. People do it on Google devices increasingly. They'll do it on computers as well. And they'll, doing it through web, what hopefully will eventually be web standards, but now are actually fairly proprietary web APIs. It's going to be is some service where it makes sense for that to happen.
Yeah, I'm curious to try it out. I haven't tried it out yet. With the beta, I haven't installed the beta because I have this total fear that it's going to destroy my life if I put a beta on any of my machines here. So I guess I'll put it on and I'll take a look at it. But to me, I think we've kind of forgotten about hardware and think about all the announcements that we get and all these new products. Samsung is releasing these Ultrabooks. Nobody's talking about the processor in this thing. All you see is i3, i5, i7. I mean, and you kind of figure out what it's going to be.
It doesn't matter. Because,
it doesn't even matter, yeah.
In the old days, when Microsoft was the only game in town and Windows was the biggest thing in the world, the new version of Windows never ran well on whatever the hardware was. You always had to wait for the hardware to catch up. And today we have more computing horsepower in so many devices, whether it's a phone, a tablet, a mini tablet, your actual computer, whether it's a giant tower like the thing I have or a Mac Mini, whatever. I mean, we don't even know what to do with all these cycles.
Yeah, nobody knows what kind of megahertz or gigahertz the iPad is running on. All you know is that, it got thinner this time. Nobody's talking about the specs. Or you hear dual core, quad core. I mean, it's interesting how we shifted from that over the last 10 years. Totally
you think about
shifted.
the iPad is a great example. So really modern device, really thin and light, gets killer battery life. When you think about improving that thing, where are the improvements going to come? There's almost nothing you could. I mean, there are going to be evolutionary updates to the hardware, no doubt about it. But I mean, ultimately, the big improvements to that thing, software.
It's software. Absolutely, and that's where it's lacking, in my opinion.
Yeah, severely, but that's a specific example. But I mean, that would be true of any. I'm just using it as a good example. But I mean, Android, Windows, whatever. I mean, the improvements are going to have to come through software.
You know, we were talking about the ecosystem, and almost every week we talk about the iOS experience and the Google Android experience, and now with the Windows Phone. And we were talking about how people just stay in their ecosystem, and you don't see these hops back and forth unless you're kind of in the tech world and you're part of this group that, you know, we like gadgets, so we buy everything. Just over the weekend, my wife wanted an Apple TV because you're able to do AirPlay with Apple TV, and she wanted to take from her iPad. She wanted to just play whatever she was doing with Apple TV.
Yep.
And I went to go buy it, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm not going to get it. I probably could do this with Google TV. And there was an app for Google TV, and I downloaded the app, and it works perfectly.
With the iPad.
With the iPad. And with my laptop. I could do my laptop, too, through AirPlay. And it does AirPlay mirroring. It does all of it. And I was thinking, this is amazing. I didn't go to buy the Apple TV because I'm already committed to the Google experience. I'm already involved in there. I've already invested the $100 for the unit plus all those apps that I wanted to get, which, let's say another $20 for the apps. Right. So I didn't go buy it because then I thought to myself, now I got to do all this all over again. And that's exactly how people think. If you're in the iOS experience, it's rare for you to jump ship and go buy an Android phone. It's not really the software, really. It's the ecosystem and how convenient it is for you now. And that's where the boom is. So I thought that was.
I mean, you know, and there'll be improvements on both ends. But if you have a Kindle Fire HD, or if you have a new iPad, or you have a new whatever Windows RT tablet, I mean, there are going to be new versions of those devices sometime in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
None of them will be compelling enough for you to upgrade, probably. But the software updates that may or may not occur coincidental with those hardware updates are going to be extremely meaningful to you, assuming they're made available to you. You know, those are the things that are going to make the difference. And I think it's just where we happen to be in time. I mean, this is something that goes up and down. It depends on where you're looking at. But looking at today and the near future, I think it's all software going forward.
It's all software.
For now, for this cycle. You know.
Do you think with something like RT, you're going to see it actually depending on the hardware? Because we were talking about how RT kind of doesn't make sense for what it's doing now. And if they had gone with like a lighter, faster Intel chipset, they might have been able to do what they want. So does that rely on the hardware?
RT has a very specific goal for Microsoft. I mean, this was their chance to do the iPad closed box thing. So I think the thing that current users of Windows RT need to think about is whether they will ever see a major software update ever, right? And I actually don't believe that they will. I think that this thing is designed to be basically a sealed box, an appliance, and that obviously there are going to be updates over the next year or two.
Yeah.
That you're not getting Windows 9, or Windows RT2, whatever it is. I don't think so. Because the hardware advances that will occur over the next 3 years will be, or whatever it is, will be compelling enough that it doesn't make sense to bring forward these old machines. It will be like the Windows Phone thing, where it just doesn't make sense. Or you'll get some subset,
Yeah. I want to continue.
I really think it's a box. I think it's designed to be it's a thing. It does what it does,
But who's its target, user base? Like who are they trying to attract with it?
You're asking the $1 million question. I have no idea.
Who's buying it?
It's like we want to buy people, or we want to sell something to people that we call Windows but isn't Windows. The market for this is so bizarre. I mean, I have heard from people who've said, I like that it doesn't run Windows desktop applications. Like yippee-ki-yay. I mean, like, why? If you like that, just buy an iPad. At least it has software. Like I don't understand that rationale, but I like what they're doing with the environment. I think it's going to mature into something special and all that kind of stuff. But
they kind of laid
I mean,
out their update path this week, right? They kind of said what they're planning on doing with updating Windows.
What?
Maybe I'm just totally making that up. I thought Mary Jo posted something like Microsoft is kind of saying like,
no, not exactly. So what they did was they announced what they're doing with their cloud management stuff of mobile devices. So
okay.
Windows RT, Windows 8, and Windows Phone 8 are all going to be managed the same way through a cloud-based service they have. But it's not so much the way they're going to update the OS.
Okay.
That's how businesses can manage those devices.
Okay, so I totally misread that entire thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you did.
I want to, since we're talking about cloud-based services, why don't we talk about Carbonite.com?
Right.
Paul, by the way, I think I got you a Carbonite account.
Oh, I already bought one. So
Did you?
Thank you.
I sent an email. I'm like, hey, can Paul have a Carbonite account?
You know
And he
what?
got back to me.
What it came down to for me was like, look, I guess I thought about this after I asked you that, and then I realized, if I'm actually going to use this thing, I got to pay for it because I can't, I can't just get like a gift, and then tell people, oh, you got to use this thing. It's great because I'm getting it for free. I mean, I got to be paying for this stuff, so I just bought it. And by the way, it's great.
So tell me about your experience with it.
So the reason I did this, the reason I wanted to look into Carbonite is last year I replaced a Windows Home server with a Windows Server Essentials server, which is great for what it is. I think it's overkill for a home. I've got terabytes and terabytes of storage attached to it. I've got like redundant storage. I'm using storage space. It's insane. And I'm using CrashPlan for cloud-based backup of that server. And so I wanted to experiment with a Windows 8 PC that I would use as a sort of server. And I wanted to have a much smaller data footprint on it. So instead of, say, 12 terabytes or whatever I have on the server, I wanted to have less than 500 gigabytes of data on this thing, which I did, get it down to. And I'll be writing more about that stuff. But I figured, I have CrashPlan. I have a multi-PC CrashPlan thing. I'll use that. CrashPlan would not back this thing up to save its life. Like, I don't know what the problem is, but it would never complete the backup. It was always going to be weeks away from being complete. And so last week when I mentioned it, I'd kind of gotten frustrated by that point. And I said, I'm going to blow off this thing and try something different. And so I put CrashPlan on it, and I probably did it. I probably got off the podcast and did it. And so I've been monitoring it. In fact, I have the machine up in a remote desktop window, and it doesn't mean anything now because it's done, but it's done. So the backup's complete. So the backup that was going to take, that's been running since October or whatever, whenever I set the thing, probably not October, maybe November or something, was never going to complete, backed up. I think it completed a couple of days ago, a day ago, let's say a day. So it's done.
Yeah, I did. I installed Carbonite on my wife's new Lenovo, and all of her Word files, all the Excel files, everything would work, goes right automatically. Every time she creates a file, it gets backed up, and it's amazing because I don't have to worry. Oh my God, what am I going to do if she loses it? I've endless amounts of times I've backed everything up to a USB stick or an SD stick, and I've totally forgotten where the hell I put the thing. Right. Or I've backed stuff up to an external hard drive, and here's a funny story that happened with me over the break. My hard drive caught on fire, started smoking.
Hilarious.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it had all my images on it. Now, luckily for me, I had redundancy, and I backed up multiple times, but I didn't have a cloud backup service at the time. And I'm actually going to put Carbonite on my machine too, because I'm thinking, you know what? That's not a good thing if I lose 2 drives, and it could happen. Anything could happen.
By the way, so I've been writing a lot about this kind of, to the cloud thing, that data zero thing I talked about probably back in December on the podcast. But, so there's a certain kind of person that freaks out about the cloud thing, and I get that. And I'm going to the cloud. Whatever. I've sorted through all the issues there personally, but for some people, whether it's cost of bandwidth, the speed of bandwidth, whatever it is, for some reason, cloud is not a viable alternative for them. The one thing I have to say to you is this: you should back up locally, like you're talking about, to some server or another PC, whatever it is. Like the Windows 8 PC that I have, using as sort of I think of it as a server. It's just a PC running Windows 8. Is a great use for an older computer as you've upgraded to something else. You can just use it as kind of a backup server, whatever. So you have this backup locally. That's good. It's always good. You could back up to a hard drive. You could back up to a NAS. It doesn't matter what it is. But the problem is if it's in your house and you get robbed or the house burns down or whatever, some tornado comes flying through your street, whatever it is, you need to have some backup that's somewhere else. And, I'm going to use the cloud for that personally, but in the old days, I would do a SneakerNet thing where I would rotate a giant, at the time, physically giant, 1 terabyte drive between my house and my parents' house, just so it wasn't here. So my thing is simply, I always hear really negative feedback from some people who just don't like the cloud stuff, but make sure you have something that's not in your house, however you do it. If you want to take the time and effort, whatever it is, even if it's just rotating 2 USB 3 hard drives, whatever, just get it out of your house.
Yeah, and they have different plans too. So depending, someone said they don't handle external hard drives. They have plans for that, and they have plans for businesses. It's amazing. I'm actually a big fan of them. So they're advertising with the show, so that's good. You could try Carbonite for free on the website carbonite.com, and if you use offer code WhatTheTech, you get 2 bonus months with your purchase, which is great. 14 months you get for that. Carbonite.com. Online backup. I want to thank them for supporting the show. Now, Paul, I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
We saw at CES this year, we had a couple of announcements from Verizon with Time Warner and cable, I think Xfinity, and they all pretty much had the same exact idea. Go smaller with the cable boxes, put more stuff on the online, and you could watch it on different devices. But today there was an interesting announcement that I got to pull it up here. I can't find it. Comcast is taking a $150 million stake in a set-top box maker, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about when Google purchased Motorola Mobility, because they had the set-top box division was part of that, and it seems like they're spinning everything off, and they're slowly trying to split up the company where they're only handling the phones and everything else is being sold off. What do you make of this deal? Because to Comcast to sign a deal with a set-top box maker, I think it's Aris, the set-top box maker that they signed on with, it seems like the cable companies are putting more emphasis on the actual hardware in your house rather than just supplying channels and having this awful UI. Or I could be totally wrong, and they could be trying to control everything.
Well, obviously Comcast, like Fios, like any of these other companies, have some vested interest in this. So I'm glad to see them investing in this. The weakest spot in the entire cable TV industry right now, from a user experience standpoint, I think is the set-top box. These things look like 1970s East Berlin, Soviet era, hardware artifacts. They're so terrible.
Yeah.
The one we complain about this a lot, the one we use on Fios is a joke. So I'm glad that they're fixing this, or hopefully fixing it. But, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I look at devices that are really small and silent, like the Apple TV or the Roku box, where they just work great with online services. That it's possible that the future of these set-top boxes is something smaller and lighter like that, because a lot of what we can do could be done in the cloud. I mean, these companies are providing you with bandwidth already. If you think about Fios, for example, if you do on-demand on Fios, that's an IP-based service. So you can record shows, of course, and so my kids record this unbelievably awful collection of TV shows. But they also go to on-demand and they watch a lot of the same shows on demand, right? Mm-hmm. And in some ways, that kind of solves the same problem a slightly different way. And, maybe the better solution is this software versus hardware thing we were just talking about, where, you could fix the software on the box, I guess, and you should, but, maybe the box isn't so important anymore. Maybe with bandwidth, especially here in the United States, a lot of this could be cloud-based. These people have the shows. I mean, why am I limited to what's on a hard drive in my house, for storage? I mean, why can't it just be recorded to the cloud?
What's interesting? At CES last year, Verizon had made the statement that they want every device that you have is going to have Fios TV on there. Why should you be behind a cable box? And we saw their first move when they put they put a couple channels on the Xbox. You could actually watch a couple channels on the iPad now, which I think that the availability is more on the iPad than it is on the Xbox, which is bizarre to me. But
on Fios app?
On the Fios app, yeah.
That might have changed. They just had a big update to that where they went from like 7 or 17 channels to like 70 channels. So there's been
they might have added more. Okay, that I haven't used the Xbox One in a couple months, so. But at this year's CES, that wasn't their thing. They weren't talking about how you could watch everywhere. They were more about having one big server, and you would have these little repeater boxes in every room, like tiny little Apple TV type boxes in every single room, and everybody has access to the DVR and I think it was the on-demand program in DVR.
That's like a Dish thing, isn't it? Isn't that how those things work?
Kind of, yeah.
Sounds familiar.
And it's almost like they went backwards. Do I still have this thing up? I do. Sorry.
Well, look, there are different ways of doing it, but the weak link here has always been this stupid box, stupid, underpowered, junky-looking, crazy, old-fashioned box with what was probably the oldest hard drive on Earth sitting inside of it, limiting what I can record. I don't get it, and I don't know anything about this company that they just invested in, but hopefully it's better than that horrific. Although, actually, it's funny. The box I have is a Motorola box.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Fios is all Motorola.
Giant Motorola box. It looks like something from the 1970s, doesn't it?
But
something that would be like
I kind of want them. I kind of think that they want you to have this bad experience on the cable box.
Really?
Because then
Why?
you're not going to change the channels. Like, you kind of stick to what you're watching, and that's it. Like, I can't.
It's so slow.
Like, there's been times that because I know the experience is so terrible, I don't switch to on-demand programming because it takes forever to go through it, and I just don't watch it on demand.
It just seems so awful and wrong, doesn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think they're going to kind of change the way that they do it, and they're going to kind of open up more?
I think they have to. I am surprised they haven't already. This is the time for these companies to shine and retain and grab new subscribers. I mean, people are going to movies less and less. People have awesome HD TVs in their homes. They want to have these good experiences. And by the way, they plug in boxes like the Xbox 360, the Roku, the Apple TV, and they work great.
Yeah.
And then they use the thing that they're paying. I mean, we pay Verizon some hundreds of dollars every month between our cell phones and Fios and everything else we do. We have the crappiest interface in the world.
Oh, it's awful. It's awful.
Yeah,
and
it's really bad. So this is something I don't understand why they wouldn't be investing in this kind of thing.
And now, but here's the thing. It's just the cable company taking over. So what does that mean for the quality of it? I mean, it doesn't really speak.
Yeah.
Google had, and they didn't put it on there. I don't know. I thought it was interesting that they're trying to kind of figure out a way to do it, but nobody's figuring out the right way to do this.
Right.
Like, nobody's doing it right. We have all these services, and nobody's doing it right.
No, but this is the thing. I mean, Microsoft badly wants this. Nintendo and Sony are going after it as well. This is perceived as the next big market for computing devices or whatever. And it's a big push for these companies. This is the chance for these cable companies to shine and prove that those companies aren't needed to do those things.
Yeah.
You can buy TVs now that have all this stuff built in. Why isn't Netflix and Hulu built into my cable box? It's crazy.
It's baffling. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think this is an area that can change big time this year, and hopefully that's what this purchase or investment is all about.
With the cable companies. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird situation for them, but I think something like Fios, where you could actually watch it on the iPad, that's the right move compared to, buying up the cable boxes and still keeping it behind it.
It's like things have gotten a lot better. I mean, remember HBO was always you subscribe to HBO, you watch it at home.
Yeah.
And I used to always think when I'd go on the road years and years ago, why can't I watch HBO? I subscribe to HBO. Why can't I watch it from free from a hotel room? Or why can't I I subscribe to this stuff on my not subscribe, like I record these shows on my set-top box at home on my cable. Why can't I watch that stuff when I'm on the road? And all of a sudden that stuff has all gotten a lot better. You can take HBO on the road with you. You can take all this stuff on the road with you. And there are these like sort of interim solutions like Slingbox that kind of
but nobody's talking about Slingbox anymore.
It's crazy. It's
yeah.
stupid. Because you can do all that stuff through the cloud now from the company that provides you with the service. Slingbox was like the last ditch version of the like I don't know what to call it. It's like when you used to have a media center PC and you would like IR blast the remote, so you were sort of controlling another remote with one a separate remote. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Weird. It's weird that we're still talking about these set-top boxes where we have so much. So much going on.
Eventually, it's like, right. I mean, you should be, and this is like I was talking about walking around, talking to the house. I mean, you should be able to walk into your bedroom and say something and have the HBO come up on the wall, and you're just a subscriber and you just get it. And maybe you're in a hotel, same thing. It knows who you are. You just get it.
You know what baffles me? Pay-per-view still exists. The model for pay-per-view.
Yeah, the live event. Well, yeah. Look, the way. It's interesting, like how technology evolves. Years and years ago, in the 1990s, I used to go to theaters, and Microsoft would broadcast an event over satellite to a theater. And so we would sit in a theater in Phoenix, for example, and watch a Microsoft event live. We would actually do this. It was kind of like a pay-per-view thing. Today, obviously, we have, they broadcast this stuff over the web. I mean, you don't have to go anywhere. Sometime this month, I will go to a theater and watch a satellite broadcast of a live event in some other theater that some guys that used to be on Mystery Science Theater are doing, where they're riffing on a movie, and that's kind of like pay-per-view. It's like a live pay-per-view. Yeah. I mean, why can't we, in the comfort of our own home, watch you could do it like every night. Like you could watch like the Rolling Stones on tour from home
every single night that they're on.
Every night, every show. I mean, there would be people who would pay for that every show. So I think there is a place for pay-per-view,
But they're not, again, the model is broken.
Well, it's ridiculous now because what's pay-per-view today? It's basically fights, right? Is there anything else that's
fights, UFC, wrestling, boxing.
Pay-per-view made sense for me in the days when Mike Tyson was around, like pay-per-view made sense because it was an event and it was like something that people wanted to watch. Like when I see ads for pay-per-view now, I don't understand who these people are. Like I don't even understand what the fighting is now. This the weird forms of fighting that they have.
The UFC,
I guess whatever it is. I don't know. I mean, but there's all kinds of things that could be pay-per-view that should be pay-per-view. Concerts are a great example, but
I think it's the fear of giving something away way too many times. But
you're not giving it away.
The Rolling Stones had the WWE produce their live pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. They had a live pay-per-view, I think like 2 months ago, and they hired them to produce it because they understand how to produce live pay-per-views. And I think that's the big fear where pay-per-view live content is very difficult to produce well. And I guess it's unpredictable if you're doing it every single night if they're doing it on tour. You know what? If Led Zeppelin went on tour right now,
oh my God,
and they did a live pay-per-view every city that they're on, they're doing a live pay-per-view. You know what? I would probably order every single live pay-per-view.
I know, I would watch it. I mean, but it's not just that, it's everything. I mean, I think we talked about this movies before. I mean, like The Hobbit comes out, I don't want to necessarily sit in a theater with the types of people that want to see The Hobbit. No, I mean, I don't want to necessarily go to a theater because I don't like theaters. So I don't, but let's pretend I have some awesome 60-inch, HD 3D TV thing. I mean, how much would you pay to watch a movie like that at home one time while the movie was still in the theater for something that was, like a tier 1 excellent movie like that? A lot, right? Because it's really expensive to go to a theater. So figure 5 people, double it, and I bet you get people to pay that amount. I bet you would.
Oh, 100%. I think this is an interesting discussion to have because what is a model for paid content online and on your TV? I do want to continue that, but we have one last advertiser for the show. and that's Squarespace. We are packed with advertisers here, and what a good ad to have. I know Paul has a Squarespace site. He's working on his book, and he's people comment, and he's adding stuff as he's writing the book, and I think it's an unbelievable idea. I had a conversation with a relative yesterday. I went out and they needed some help with website design, and they wanted to do a website, and they wanted to build it, and it was getting really complicated. They really don't have the experience to build a website on their own. And I told them, I'm like, you know what, you should go check out Squarespace because it's all plug and play stuff. You just add the content that you want. It's even totally scalable. So if I'm watching on a 17-inch device or I'm watching on a 4-inch device, it's able to scale the images and the content on the site to fit it. So it's totally mobile, which is great. And it's totally easy to use. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase with a new account, go to squarespace.com and you could use the offer code WhatTheTech1 when you sign up. I think it's a great thing to be able to just go and make a website and it doesn't look amateurish, because that's what it was like when everybody, if you went to go open up a website to sign up, you would use what, like GeoCity, or you would use one of those awful services that was free. And the thing would just look like it was made by a 2-year-old. I mean, we still have sites that are made by 2-year-olds, but with Squarespace, you could have a totally inexpensive website, totally easy to use, and it looks like a professional made it. And that's the great part about it. If you kind of want to mess around with the CSS and you want to do the coding, they also have developer options, so you could have more flexibility with the way that you set up the website. I think you should go try it. It's absolutely free. Go to squarespace.com. You could use offer code WhatTheTech1 when you sign up. I like Squarespace, and I'm going to continue using them. I'm actually making a personal site on Squarespace, just so I write my comments about random things, just random thoughts by Andrew. I'm going to do it on Squarespace, and you should too. All right. To kind of continue with this, I have to get the Squarespace ad, and I totally forgot about it. What is the model for paid content on the internet? Because we produce live content. We do live shows every day, but I don't charge you because I don't expect anyone to pay for it.
Sure.
Maybe a couple of people will pay for it, and that's it. So for me, it's more of a reach and to kind of have ads on there rather than charging people. But I've seen people do live events and charge for it, and it's a disaster. And is it the inexperience of producing live content that kind of holds it back? Because I was talking to someone
live content.
Tough. I'm talking about live. Yeah. Yep. And I was talking to someone that's in the business of, I don't want to say which one of these companies that it is, but I was talking to them, and they do live streaming like a Stick'em or Ustream or Justin TV. And they were saying that the hardest thing that they face is having the content producers produce decent content. And no matter what event it is, it could be a concert, it could be a show like this. People constantly, reach out to, let's say, Ustream, or I'm just saying Ustream, and they'll say, hey, I want a refund. It didn't work properly. It kept crashing. The video wasn't working right. So is it possible to have a pay model this early on in live internet content?
If anyone could do it, it would be someone like, Louis C.K., who had a very successful, it was a pay for download kind of event. It was like one of his live comedy shows. So you could almost picture the next step from there would be an actual live show. And I talked about this notion of, we go to see movies that are that are broadcast over satellite to movie theaters. I mean, it's not a huge step to go from that to, broadcasting over the web, I guess. I mean, it's certainly conceivable. I mean, we watch, we go to a theater and we watch these guys perform something live in a theater, someone else. I mean, what's to stop them from broadcasting it to a Google Hangout or to, some through some facility where they could make money doing it?
Let's say you want to go see Les Mis on Broadway. I don't even think it's on Broadway anymore, but let's say you want to go see Les Mis. Why couldn't they have, once a week you could watch the live play?
Right. Oh no, that's what I'm talking about. I actually do think that's a huge future generator of cash. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just think it's really the technology of it, because I think a lot of people still can't watch live content at home.
Because why? Because of attention span?
No. Their internet, they just can't support. It can't work.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, we get people all the time that message us and they go, I have 10 megabits down and 4 megabits up, but I can't watch your show. And I have to explain, is it consistent? Is it working consistently? If you have hiccups every couple minutes, you're going to have issues.
this is not. These things are not mutually exclusive. I mean, you could have a live event where someone pays for it to see it live, and then could download it and watch it offline later as well. I mean, I don't understand why they have to. One has to remove the possibility of the other. I mean, I do think it's possible. I don't think that something like what we do, you could really charge that way. I don't think there's any.
Well, some people do, Paul.
Do they?
Yeah. I know a lot of people, and actually how their model works is they'll broadcast it live, and if you want to watch it on demand, they charge you for it.
Okay.
But I personally don't see that.
That doesn't make sense to me personally, but.
I don't know. To me, that doesn't make sense. But I mean, to some people, there's a couple, and they do the opposite thing. If you want to watch them do the show live, you got to pay to watch it live. But if you want to watch it on demand, then you could go and watch it on demand on their website. So there are different models. I don't know if necessarily they're the right ones.
Right.
But if we're talking about, a major company or a major movie that comes out, why not just do this whole premiere night? You charge $29 to watch it at home, and everybody watches that movie at home for $29.
By the way, I just coincidentally got an email from Dragon Naturally Speaking. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Are they upset at you?
Yeah. No. I mean, not for me personally, like just a marketing email.
With film,
honestly, someone's going to do what you just said. It's going to be an experiment, and it's going to earn lots and lots of money, and it's going to make a lot of sense. There's all kinds of new ways of doing
even with
things
movies,
now.
Paul, with film. I mean, I'm just surprised that we're still under this model where you have to leave your house, go to a movie theater, and sit there for the experience, and then leave 2 hours later, sitting in the dark with strangers. I don't want to do that. If they give me an option to pay $30 and it's premiere night, and it's only one night you could do this. Premiere night, you watch it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
I think that would be great. And
I'd be all over it. Or even if it was like opening weekend or something, because it's going to make if it's a good movie or a big movie, it's going to make a lot of money anyway.
Yeah, so opening weekend, you do it for 2 nights.
On the cake. I don't understand why they don't do stuff like this. I really don't. I really think they're going to get there. It's possible that in that industry that the movie theaters have some bizarre hold over Hollywood.
That's exactly what it is. No, that's exactly what it is.
But the paper boys had a huge hold over the New York Times. I mean, it's just give me a break. I mean, that doesn't make sense.
But it's become a numbers game, right? You measure the success of the movie, not the span that it's in the theater, but that opening weekend is what says if something is successful or not.
Look, what actually makes it successful is how much money you make. It doesn't. To me, it doesn't matter how you do it. You see these things on iTunes, especially where they'll have early releases of movies, before it's on video kind of thing, or even sometimes before it's in the theater. And they're a little expensive. It might be $20 or $30 if you wanted to buy it or something like that. Or maybe you could rent it for $10. It's basically what I'm describing, but it's very limited. And they just need to formalize this and make it the way things are done.
I think the big fear is piracy, where if you give it away on the internet, somebody buys it, you could actually take that and pirate it, and now it's on the internet and in really good quality. Yeah, but that is such a small percentage of the people that are actually watching the film. Even if it's 1 in 10 that do that, you're still targeting an audience that normally... Someone brought up disabled people. A lot of people are disabled and they don't want to go to the movies.
Sure.
I mean, I'm just saying, if you want to talk about a group that would probably benefit from something like this, that's an entire group that's not going to the movie.
Right.
I personally don't go to the movies because I'm mentally ill and I think there's feces on the seats.
You bring one of those CSI lights with you.
No, I just don't go. I just don't go to the movies. It's a whole thing about me. Oprah had this special on TV about the feces on the seats.
I don't like going to the movies, although, I don't know. I've been a couple of times recently. It's been all right. So
see, James in our chat room says he used to clean the movie theaters and that happens. See?
I used to... I used to sit in the back of a theater and you could see all the cell phones going on. And you could see people texting each other. And you'd have a guy who would pick up the phone and be like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm in the movies. What's up?" And it's like, seriously, what? Those kinds of experiences kind of ruin you on the theater, But I don't know. The last couple I've been to have gone well. So
I like to watch things at my pace, and I like to talk throughout the movie. I evaluate everything that's happening, and I look for flaws. I look for someone that mistakes in the background or something like that. And I'm always talking to my wife.
You can pause it and make fun of it.
Yeah, and I can't do that if I'm in the movie. I got to sit there and be quiet, and I don't want to do that. I want these people
All right,
to
well-
give me the movie. I'll pay for
I
it.
think all you're asking for is choice, and I agree
That's
with
it.
that.
That's all I'm asking for. Just give me the option.
Yeah.
Just give me the option. I don't know. But we got to wrap it up, Paul. Actually, that's an interesting discussion about the paid platform and how it works.
Right.
What's working and what's not. I don't think they even know what's going to work and what's not going to work. I think they're just doing, it's very limited and they're doing everything in a very limited manner and they're hoping people start using it, but they don't want to give too much. Because if you do, then that's options for the people and you don't want them to have any options. The same thing with Fios releasing those channels on the Xbox. They've only released like 20 channels and they slowly release the rest. I don't know. Paul's website, winsupersite.com. Great. That blog was really good about Chrome.
Wow.
I really liked it.
Okay. I'm not sure I'd include it in my best work, but thank you.
No, but it was good. I because somebody sent it to me and I didn't even know it came out. So I was like,
Felt
oh,
it was
look, Paul
important
broke the
enough to
news for me.
discuss. Okay.
You could also follow Paul on Twitter at The Rot. Are you still playing games? What are you playing?
I don't. I do the same exact thing every day. I just play
Same
Call
exact
of
thing.
Duty. Yeah.
You could go to our website, gfknetwork.com, and watch the show. If you miss any portion of the show, you could get it on demand for free. We don't charge you for anything here at the GFK Network, just a couple ads a show, and hopefully you guys go and sign up for them. You could also follow me on Twitter at Andrew Zarian. If you have an email, send it to us, guysfromqueens@gmail.com. Most of the time I respond to you. Unless it's like a really long email, then it's really hard for me to keep reading it. You can send a nice little short email. Tell me how much you love Paul. And and we'll see y'all next week on What
Ask
the
us
Tech.
why we bash the Mac so much.
Yeah, why do you hate Apple? I'm sorry, sir. Every one of my products that I use is an Apple product. I don't know what you're talking about. We'll see y'all next week on What the Tech. Good night. Next week on What the Tech. Good night.